Well, good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Stephen.
In your column today, you say that the Prime Minister has promised to be a better PM with a better government next year. And he said this following a bollocking, to use your Latin expression, a bollocking from Ray Hadley, the Sydney shock jock. So what does Tony Abbott need to do?
I think if he's really serious about being a better leader and a better government in the second full year, he's got to address a number of problems. He's got to get more of a grip on the whole domestic agenda. He's got to deliver a policy message that's clearer and more coherent. He's got to make sure his government brings down a second budget that doesn't have the problems of the first one, and of course he's still got to deal with some of those difficulties, measures not through the Senate, and there are a number of those. And also I think in terms of style, he needs to improve the way the government communicates. He needs to address also the tensions and discontents that are around both at the top of the government in its higher reaches and at backbench level. That of course goes to his own office and how that performs, how dominant it is, and people are kicking back at that. So if he really wants things to improve in 2015, there's a lot of work to be done.
He says that he's going to work up until Christmas. Could he be working on a reshuffle, do you think?
That seems to be the message. He is aware that he needs to deal with the problem of Arthur Sinodinos, who stood aside as Assistant Treasurer for a very long time now while ICAC investigations that he appeared in front of on. Now, the reports from those investigations, there are a couple of them, have now been pushed back to at least March, possibly later, because of ICAC being involved in a High Court case about its powers. And therefore, that would mean that running up to the budget, there still would not be an Assistant Treasurer. Now, Matthias Cormann has had that job as well as finance. He's actually done very well, I think, this year, one of the successes of the ministry. But nevertheless, the government does need full firepower on the economic front. It's one of its areas of difficulty when it should be an area of strength. So I think we probably will see the Arthur Sinodinos matter addressed over the next few days. The Prime Minister favours a limited set of changes, but sometimes these little things grow into bigger things, as it were. We'll see what happens.
You suggest that more pragmatism is needed, and I have to say that I thought that in their first term they would be pragmatic. They'd lay the groundwork for major reform, get re-elected, and then perhaps come out more strongly in a second term. But I'm wondering now whether they are so ideologically driven that they can't keep it in, to use Cat Stevens' words, and political pragmatism is beyond them. What do you think?
I've been surprised at how ideological they are, because I thought that although his image might be rather different, in fact Tony Abbott's record as a minister was fairly pragmatic. But they've not just been ideological and tribal, and that's been a problem for them too, but I think the whole message that they've been sending has been full of inconsistencies. Now we're seeing this a bit in the tax messages, but it goes across the board, and this has been a problem. I think there has to be next year a better mix of pragmatism in there, or else they'll stay off the rails.
Tax reform has had an airing this week, with Peter Costello basically advising them not to touch it. You yourself say it's like someone with lung failure entering a marathon, but how else are they going to get fresh revenue and not just cut spending?
Tax reform has now become a real dilemma for the government, because they built up expectations that they want to look at tax and then take something to the 2016 election. And of course that does mean going to the GST, because the big problem in the tax system is that it relies too much on direct tax, not enough on indirect tax. And yet Joe Hockey this week again has been completely hosing down the prospect of tackling the GST. Now, people in the government say it's not off the agenda, but if you keep sending out these conflicting signals, everybody becomes confused. You've really got to say, look, we need to look at this problem. We don't know yet what we might do, but we are looking at it, rather than appearing to blow hot and cold all the time.
Well, tax reform is not a festive note to end on, unless perhaps you're an economist. But thank you, Michelle, for your company over the past year. We've covered a range of topics and I've learned a lot from you. I wish you and our steadily growing viewing audience a great break. And as Sergeant Esterhaus used to say in Hill Street Blues, be careful out there.
Happy Christmas.
Thank you.